Okay, baby. Let's rock and roll.
Let's roll.
Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to Whiteaker Tales, Volume 6. WTO protests 20 years later. So thanks for all showing up here. There was a time when finally we could kick ass on the machine and the man, and I think we should really look at that and rejoice in that day, November 30th, 20 years ago. It was a great time. I'm sure we all got a bunch of stories, what we're right, what we're wrong, and so hopefully we'll hear a lot of those tonight. I would also just like to thank Sam Bonds for continuing to hold this piece. Appreciate that. I'd like to thank Sweet Life, Taco Vor, and The Grit for helping sponsor this stuff, even though they haven't paid me in a while. Of course, I got to write up an invoice or some shit, right? So anyway, thanks for showing up, and hope we can just rejoice and have a great old time on a time which was really special, I'm sure, in most of our lives who were there. So tonight, we have a different host. Somebody I worked with for a few years back in the days, as I tell my daughter, and we did some things together, and it was difficult to work with this son of a bitch. But one thing I did find out is he got shit done, and you love him or hate him. I feel you got to respect him, and so I'm just going to wind him up and let him go. And here's Tim Ream for the evening.
Oh, there's at least one person looking great. Hi, welcome. I'm so glad you all are here. I'm pretty excited. I want to start by kind of like checking out folks' relationship to that day. How many people here, at least like at that time, were reading news like that week of this WTO? They were aware of it as it was going on. All right, that's probably about half the room. How many people were up there exactly 20 years ago to the minute? Right now, up there in the streets, one way or another. There's got to be like more than a dozen here, maybe 15 people. Awesome. Is there anybody here that actually got arrested up there? Oh, you chicken shit. No, as you all know, us experienced activists get the other people arrested, yeah. All right, but still cool. So what we're going to do tonight, I think, is we're going to show a video that I'm going to just give a little introduction to soon. And then we're going to have a couple of pre-planned folks come up and tell some stories about their experiences then. And then we're going to just have a broad-ranging discussion, storytelling, and so on. I think part of my thought is, part of this is celebration, but part of it also should be like how we can contextualize and learn from what happened then to bring it into the world right now. I have never met a person who was up there for that week who didn't think it was one of the most profound experiences of their life, who didn't have something about their way they view the world radically changed by what they saw and what they experienced. And so maybe we can reflect, maybe we can turn our minds back to what it was like back then, remember some of the important lessons that we learned, and figure out how we can try to take some of those lessons and move forward in our crazy, fucked up world that we live in today. So, exactly 20 years ago today, I was sitting in an editing studio. How many people here have seen Breaking the Spell? Okay, so that's Tim Lewis' film. But Tim Lewis and I have been working for a couple years before that on a film called Pickaxe. And so I learned a little bit about video editing and stuff. So I'm sitting here now thinking, you know, the mainstream media are going to try to tell this story. They're going to try to spin this story. I had a pretty good idea. I mean, nobody knew exactly what was going to happen, right? But I had a pretty good idea that the protesters were going to be pretty effective on the streets. And I had seen enough protester mainstream media in the 5 years that I've been doing stuff intensely, that I knew that we had to get our story out. How many people here remember something called independent media centers, the IMCs, right? It was a brand new concept that had just happened in Seattle. The first website, the first IMC website was just going up. The whole concept that we are the media, we need to tell our own stories, was really becoming more pervasive. Video cameras were finally something that regular people could afford and learn how to use and use effectively. So 20 years ago tonight, I was editing video that had been shot all day long by Tim, and he was continuing to shoot video up until midnight. We edited that video into, I believe, a 19-minute piece that we're going to show now. We were done editing at 8 o'clock in the morning on December the 1st, like straight through the night after N30. We had it at a dub house by 10 o'clock that morning. I made an arrangement ahead of time. And by 2 o'clock the day after, which was itself an incredibly crazy day, I was standing in the 420 convergence space selling these VHS tapes for $5 a person so people could take them back to their anarchist info shops, their churches, their unions, their universities, their community centers, and have at least one point of view that was not a corporate mainstream media point of view of what happened that day. And so 20 years ago tonight, we were making this. Something that's kind of cool about it is it only exists until soon online as a really shitty rip down from a VHS tape. And this will be the first time I've seen it in probably 15 years. It's just newly been digitized. And it's, with one little dropout. There's a few little things, okay. It's, yeah, apparently Betamax tapes don't necessarily last forever. And it's been sitting in a vault for 20 years, and this is what we got out of it this week. But it's the first time to show it on a big screen, I think probably anywhere for a long time, although at that time it was shown in a lot of different places.
Lighting.
RIP, as in rest in peace, WTO N30.
In a lifetime personal experience. Here you have recorded history. Save for your kids, send to your friends, only 50 cents.
Day of meetings, the ministers gave to me. Secret tribunals, toxic BT core, no local governance, no minimum wage. Infested forest, rolled back Clean Air Act, dolphin tainted tuna.
Laws such as the Endangered Species and the Clean Water and Clean Air Act are being trampled by the World Trade Organization without any representation from the people. I'm here with non-violent, peaceful protest to shut this down so that tomorrow morning and the day after that and the day after that and years when our children grow up, they know that we did this for the earth and for love.
I'm here to protest the single biggest sellout of Canadian freedom and rights in the history of our country since the Aboriginal people were pushed off the land in the, 500 years ago. Which would be? This is an absolutely despicable act by our government, what's going on. Not only does the process stink, none of the Canadian public was consulted on what the rules should be or how the rules should be decided. It was all done behind closed doors, and they're stealing the things that we hold most dear and which give us our Canadian identity.
Ain't no problem, the people, the people outside. Ain't no problem, the people, the people outside.
You don't go along with their ideas and their goals, they can make you a third world country. It's a policy that we've seen America take against Cuba 30 years ago. That was the beginning of a bad idea. This is the culmination. It's putting American workers out of jobs. It's creating labor slavery in third world countries. It's a bad idea all around.
Where are you from?
I'm from Seattle, Washington.
Oh, yeah?
The building is shut down for the day. We don't mean to inconvenience you, but we're trying to stop the destruction. We're closing it down for everyone.
Everybody.
People have been working within it too long, and it hasn't changed anything. It just makes it worse. We're trying a different approach, and we ask you to respect that.
Another delegate, don't take it out on third parties.
We're not taking it out on you, we're just not letting you through.
It's not me doing my job.
Sorry, we're doing our job too.
People doesn't want to eat any more of that kind of food. We don't want any more hormone in the beef.
No.
We don't want any more GMO in our food. I think actually in the United States we have to make also a big movement to put this kind of multinational away. You should throw them in the sea.
biggest, most important thing that has happened as far in my whole lifetime. I feel like, you know, this is the most empowering feeling. You know, so many people out here, so many different types of people. That's the most amazing part.
That's why I'm here. Also, man, this is it. This is the end of the 20th century, which has been filled with so much brutality and exploitation in the name of profit. This is our chance. This is our moment to say no, no more, no way, never again. I mean, they have so much power, but today we have the power, and we're going to show them that we're not afraid. We're fighting for what's right. We're not going to back down. We're going to stand our ground because we're right. We're fighting for what's right. They know it too. We all know it. But the people who want to get rich, like the people who are going into the WTO to meet, they're going to be forced to listen to the voice of the people. The whole world is going to listen to the voice of the people. They cannot ignore us. There's thousands of us here. There's thousands of us. And we are not afraid. I'm thrilled to be here. Yeah, fuck Disney World. They pushed me with their back.
sitting peacefully at an intersection. A child of 2 years old was tear gassed. Old ladies were buckled over, vomiting with tears coming out of their faces.
My boss told me to do it. My boss, who's getting paid, told me to do it. And if I want to get paid, I have to listen to my boss. I have to torture people.
so that we can make it a public discussion and not a hidden agenda.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. And what do we get for it? Pepper spray. What do we get for it? Pepper spray.
Did you get pepper sprayed?
At least there are 50,000 people that really care and are worked up about something. And hopefully we can come out here and give them a shove in a little more radical direction. And it's a hell of an opportunity to show that the problem with the WTO is the same problem that all the institutions that fill our lives are guilty of. There's people other than ourselves in control of our lives. They just keep getting further and further away from us and more powerful. I don't care whether they're making decisions that I like or whether I hate. The fact that they're making those decisions is unhealthy and unnatural. And so I'm hoping that we can come out here and get crazy and fuck enough shit up that every city in the world knows that it can't host a WTO conference, and it better give control back to the people of their own lives, or else that city's going to be torn to pieces.
What do we want?
Class war!
When do we want it?
No!
What do we want?
Class war!
When do we want it?
No!
What do we want?
Class war!
When do we want it?
No!
What do you think, man?
Huh?
What do you think?
I think this is crazy, man. This is insane. I know they're just blue-collar workers. They gotta listen to us, man. This is a peaceful protest. We didn't incite any of those guys, and they're just fucking bombing our ass like crazy, you know? This is messed up. This is about corporate greed. This is not about the cops. So,
all right, thanks, man.
You have a nice day.
Steer gas incoming right near you guys.
Watch it, watch it.
Stop it! Let the motherfucker burn! This is our hell! Can't freeze out! Eyes are burning!
Are you guys burning recyclable stuff?
Yeah,
That makes me sick.
Oh, yeah. The world will never forget this fucking day. That's for damn sure. The world will never forget this fucking day.
So, what do you think? What are you here for, man?
Oh, I live here for one thing. And I'm pushing forward.
Behind you.
Whoa, okay, yeah.
Watch out! Keep it over that way!
The middle.
So you're pushing 40.
That's right. And I can push this damn thing. That's for goddamn sure.
All right.
Time to get the old fart in the action.
Does it feel pretty empowering to all of a sudden take over the fucking streets and...
Finally, my generation is able to do something or say something. We really haven't had to say too much. Well, because, I mean, most of the people my age that I graduated with, they were all caught up in the Reagan bullshit back in the 80s. And that just turned into the computer bullshit in the early 90s. And I've always been an artist and a guitar player, and you know, I've never felt sorry for myself for the fact that I haven't had too much money. But the best part is, you know, tonight, all of us are vindicated. Tonight, all of us are able to say something to the world, and nobody dies. That's the best part. I hope nobody dies, because at least for all this noise and all this tear gas and all this burning, at least a statement has been made. A real statement has been made. Thank
So it turned out it was a good idea not to trust the fuckers and to copyright it, because by Sunday of that day we found out that CBS Morning News with Charles Kuralt had stolen our footage and used it without authorization on the CBS Sunday Morning News, which they later had to pay us money for. But the more important thing was that literally this was in the hands of anybody that wanted it that was associated with the Convergence space. I had 500 copies of it printed that morning. And like I said, was selling for $5 a piece, and they literally worked their way all around the world. We sold it for $10 shipped to you wherever you were in the world by priority mail, and we were putting those things in priority mailers and shipping them around the U.S., mostly around the world to some extent, and it got seen in a lot of different places. And then it was for sale in the IMC, the Independent Media Center, and it was going off the shelf like hotcakes because it was the only thing like its kind. And then before too long,
it's the only thing they had.
Well, yes, the only one they had. Yeah. It was the only thing they had. The only thing they had to sell, like that had been done that quick. I remember a reporter buying one off of me. He's like, "You made this last night? We don't even do it that fast." And it was actually before the week was out. It was for sale in 2 different video stores. Remember video stores? It was for sale in 2 different video stores in Seattle. But then the Battle of Seattle, the IMC sanctioned video came out, and they stopped selling ours. because of its radical perspective. So the Independent Media Center, in the end, turned out to not be maybe quite as independent as you might have thought. But it still had its influence, and it helped control the story that day, and it made it so it was not so easy for the corporate media to fool at least, many people about what was going on. So I think maybe now it's a good time for story time, and maybe Kari would come up and maybe be first storyteller. Is Kari around? She was around a while ago. Oh, there she is.
She's coming in.
So you might have seen Kari's name as somebody involved with some help there in the production assistance in this. You all probably know her if you've been around the Whiteaker at all as Whiteaker's most popular artist, I think, and also one of Whiteaker's most popular activists. So here's Kari Johnson with her hands full.
You guys got to get close. Yeah, there you go.
She's too fisting. I have to hold the mic for her.
Got to put it up to your mouth, Kari.
Okay.
There you go.
That's what he said. Want to hear a story? Well, I went up there with the Tims and with Shade to do media, and we didn't know how intense it was going to be, so I was going to be a runner. So that people were going to give me the tapes, and I was going to run them back to the media center, just in case people got taken out, And I was like, okay, I'm going to run with the tapes. But and I did a little bit, but then we didn't need to do that, so that was nice. But I was kind of trailing. I was with Shade, and he had a camera, but he had it up to his eye all the time, so he couldn't really see what was going on. So I was his eyes. So he would be just like seeing one thing, and I'd be looking around, and I'd see a phalanx of police coming the other direction. I'd be like, okay, we gotta get out of here. We're going that way. And he's like, all right. And it was so intense. My God, it was really intense. There's a percussion grenade. I saw this thing about 6 feet away, and it was like a hot dog with string around it, with sizzling. And I was like, what is that? And it was like, bam! It was a percussion grenade. So it was like a grenade, but it didn't have shrapnel. And it felt like it hit the side of my face, and it felt like just like white, like someone just slapped me really hard right here. And then now I have hearing damage from that. And it was just very intense. There was some solvent in the tear gas that made women spontaneously abort. So women did that. It was intense.
From what some people say, they ran out of their regular tear gas, and they actually brought in a military grade. They had been using CS, and they brought in CX or something like that. There was never any admission of that on the part of the authorities, but.
Yeah, so it was intense. I mean, the next year here in Eugene, there was a downtown New Year's Eve thing with percussion grenades and fireworks and smoke. And I went down there and I was like, oh my God, hell no, hell no. I mean, I felt like a veteran. I mean, I just hyper vigilant. I just like, where are the police? I was like, I'm getting out of here. But I don't know. I mean, in the daytime, everything was downtown, and at night, it was went to the university up on the hill, and we go both places, and then we go home, and there was everyone there. The unions were there, all in their just a huge union marches, all these different workers. People were dressed in turtle outfits, and this rainbow lady, this big rainbow lady with a rainbow umbrella. She was just beautiful. She was like representing the world, kind of, and everybody was there, and it was so participatory. And we would go home to the house, the cooperative house we were staying at, and we put the news on, and here we are making news all day long, and it's so fresh and so real, and everyone's there and making decisions together and stuff. And we go turn the news on, and the news was like, this thing is over, this thing is dead, a few people are wrecking buildings, it's over, this doesn't mean anything, kind of. That's the feeling, every night I'd just be like, what the fuck? How can they just take, and that really showed me what the news does usually. Like, when you hear stuff on the news and it sounds like it's just, nothing's happening and it's just dead and it's over, that's how they're making it sound. It is not, Yeah.
one thought about that is like, you turn on the news right now, you see some stuff about the protest that's going on in Hong Kong, but how much are you seeing about what people are doing in Bolivia? How much are you seeing what's happening in Chile right now? How much are you seeing with the Yellow Vest movement in France? And you can go on and on. Like, there are these protest movements that are having their equivalent of like the WTO on a daily basis in countries all over the world, especially right now, but of course over the years. And there's no interest of the corporate media, of course, to share those stories with us. So it's so important that we figure out what's happening and share that information ourselves as much as possible. Should I bring
another thing. I said, I went there and there was this the central area where all the activists were gathering. What was that called? It was some sort of warehouse.
The 420 Convergence Space.
Yeah, the Convergence Space. And so
it was a nightclub that was called 420, and the name stuck.
Well, it was just far out because every group that came, all these bioregional contingents, they did the old nuclear protesting style of doing a spokes council, and it was so cool. Like my group, maybe it was like 10 of us. We sent one person to the spokes council, and the spokes council were sitting on the floor in the middle of the warehouse, and there's a strategic map of the city, and people were talking about strategy and doing like this decision-making process. There was a consensus decision-making with this behind each spokes person, their group was sitting, and so they would say, well, what do you think to the group? The group would say, well, we think this, and they'd say, okay, our group thinks this, and people were deciding like which intersection to block, and I was just like, look, I was thinking to myself, this thing is a failure. Anybody can come off the street. The cops totally know what we're doing. It's totally obvious, and these people are so naive, and we're just gonna get smashed. But I'm here anyway, because whatever. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. I mean, it totally worked. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, that spokes council, as Kari said, it comes from the nuclear movement originally, but I think it was really rejuvenated and revived with the Seattle protests, and it became sort of a staple of a lot of other protest movements. Occupy obviously used it to a great extent. Movement for Black Lives Matter has been used it to a great extent, and it's become something that's kind of, I think, just in the DNA of protest movements, this way of having a flat decision-making structure that's still somehow workable for having lots of opinions, but still having decision-making that then, is a consensus-based decision-making, which is one of the other cool, I think, things of Seattle. Maybe now Phil Weaver can come up here, another Whiteaker longtime denizen and activist who was also up there. Yeah, you can clap for Phil. And join the storytelling.
Hello. Into the mic. Got it. Is that better?
You gotta eat it, Phil.
So, hi. I'm glad to see all of you. As I expected, it's a bit of a reunion. Haven't seen a lot of you in a long time. I used to be involved with Eugene Peaceworks, and I think I was on the board like 15 years there. And so one of the interesting things about leading up to this was the preparation that was happening around the country, but of course I know more about what was happening in Eugene. And people were preparing for this, whereas a lot of people didn't even know what the WTO was. People in Eugene were busy organizing and becoming active, forming affinity groups and trying to figure out what their strategy would be before they even went up there and participated, like you said, in the DAN, the Direct Action Network, I think. And so that was interesting because people were having an opportunity to figure out what their strategy was going to be beforehand, figure out who they were going to have by their side. And I know there's some people here that participated in that, and they're going to tell some of those stories, I hope. That was a beginning that I thought was really fascinating. And kind of my role, I think, in activism over a lot of years has been largely within the peacemaking movement, but sometimes more importantly within the bridge making that happened when people would become isolated with the ideologies and around strategy. And so you had people that subscribed to a very specific Gandhian nonviolent strategy, and then you had people that maybe didn't even consider themselves activists, but like were participating, like union folks that participated in, you know, a huge march. And then there were like all different kinds of coalitions of environmental activists. And then there were, you know, anarchists, and there were, you know, the Black Bloc, and all these people were preparing for the WTO. And it was kind of exciting for me, not only like have my fingers in a lot of those pies and know a lot of those folks and hear about what their perspectives were and what their strategy was, but also then I was kind of a freelancer. I went up with Jennifer Gerard. We went up there, and I was able to participate in a lot of different things, because unlike other folks who maybe were more effective than I was, who were part of affinity groups, I was and Jen were like traveling around through a lot of different groups, you know, through the marches, part of the blockade around the convention center, there at Nike Town when windows were being busted, and you know, the direct action, the nonviolent direct action that some people here were participating in, locking down and shutting down intersections as part of that pie that had been broken, the city had broken into. So I got to see a lot of different things, and that was really exciting. And I have a lot of stories. I'm just going to mention a couple of them, maybe more later, but I want other people to have lots of time. But one of the things that I just want to contextualize, aside from the strategy that that I mentioned and what people's ideology and perspective was around that, there was also now I lost my thought. There's also this concept that I look back on, that we were battling, you know, the WTO, which is really, you know, a tool for a neoliberal perspective, and that is not stopped. So this was, I think, a huge victory of sorts regarding one of the tools that are being used. And I want to just put that out there so that people can think about not just like what happened with the WTO, but also what has continued and what is happening now, and who are the politicians still in power that are still fighting for these same neoliberal concepts and taking advantage of people around the world, because that definitely has not stopped. So I don't, you know, as much as we want to talk about the WTO and stuff and the victory there, we need to expand that in terms of strategy, in terms of ideology, in terms of political perspective. And the other thing I think is really class, and that's why I thought it was important that we had like the Teamsters Union, and all, you know, we had church groups, all these different people that were participating. You know, the street fighters. Some say they were all from Eugene. I think there were probably a few more than just from Eugene. But one of my experiences was we were walking by this hotel, and there was this stretch black limo. And this, you know, all of a sudden the Black Bloc came by. There's probably like about 30 or so kids. And they go walking by, and they like, you know, tagged and maybe like scratched up this limo as they were like walking by, just marauding through. And this huge guy just dressed to the nines, you know, in the driver's seat, chauffeur, right? Didn't own the car. Gets out. The Black Bloc didn't know that there was one straggler. He managed to grab somebody, took them down on the ground, had his hands around their throat. He was strangling this Black Bloc kid that he just happened to get a hold of, because the car that he was driving, which he did not even own, he felt some kind of attachment to, and that he was willing to put somebody else's health, if not life, in jeopardy. So me and somebody else managed to tackle him and pull his hands off this person's throat. And so that was kind of like an interesting moment. I still don't even know what all to take away from that, except that I had the opportunity to, for a lot of the people that were, people would want to dismiss and judge regarding being like the Black Bloc and property destruction and that whole thing, we actually had to step up and, you know, just take this common person and save them from actually hurting this person. So that was really kind of interesting. One more quick thing, we also managed to go to the Seattle Peace Heathens, which was a complete hippie house. I mean, when I say hippie house, you know, Eugene Extreme and country fair folk. So we were staying with them, and we managed to connect with these street fighters from Eugene that had quite the day, covered in pepper spray and tear gas and stuff. They needed a place to go, so we took them back to the Seattle Peace Heathens house. That was an interesting clash of culture right there. And it was beautiful. It was so wonderful. We had such a good time. These kids were so thankful for the hospitality that was shown. You know, these hippies and all their tie-dye and stuff were like just making food and thanking everybody, talking about the monumental steps that were being taken and how important it was to be there. And that for me was another one of the highlights of really being able to pull people together from quite different strategies and political perspectives. And then as we actually ended up leaving after the next day, I understand that other folks continued to use that as a base and stay with them throughout their time there in Seattle, and so that was a pretty fun experience.
I just want to reflect on a couple of things that Phil said. First of all, just to be super clear about it, there was a lot of preparation that went into this event, and more than a year beforehand, a collective was already, or at least by January, a collective had already formed that had begun to figure out how to organize. They would say, I think, maybe that there were 12 of them that started this. And they did all kinds of organizing, but the main thing that they did in the early days was they did their research on what the WTO was, they figured out their messaging on how to rally people to try to stop it, and they created a big broadsheet. Remember pre-internet days for the most part, right? So they printed a broadsheet. I actually ended up first seeing that broadsheet at a tree sit. I was at the Watch Mountain tree sit when somebody came and was like, hey, you all need to know about this, and like handed me this big piece of paper that explained, here's what the WTO is, here's the, it was called the Carnival Against Capital, is what they were advertising it to be. And but they also went to the union halls, they went to churches, they went to YMCAs, they went just everywhere, Lions clubs in conservative towns. They were trying to outreach to as many people as possible. And we can never ever forget how important it is to do that hard work, you know, the leather on your boots or the pleather on your boots, to really go out and pound the concrete and inform people about what's going on. Because, you know, there's action planning and there's action implementation and then there's movement building, right? And the movement building is the absolute critical piece that oftentimes doesn't get up. There was nobody following those people as they went to the Lions Hall. There was nobody there when they talked to the Elks Club or the Kiwanis or somebody about what the WTO is all about, right? But that was a critical part of what brought those 50,000 people together. And then just another thought real quick, you know, I don't know how many of you remember this, but after the WTO happened, it sort of reinvigorated or really juiced up a global movement against these global institutions. IMF, World Bank, G8 in particular. There was a huge protest that happened, I believe, in Quebec that was off the hook. Miami had, like, I think it was the FTAA, a global trade agreement in Miami. Then there was Prague. I think it was a G8 meeting, and it wouldn't be a G8 in Prague, but there was probably a World Bank meeting or some such in Prague. And then in July of 2001, with all this energy building, it was Genoa. And that was where there was like 100,000 people in the streets. That was the first time that the police in a developed country actually opened fire and killed a protester that was protesting in Genoa. At this time, the United States president could not sleep in the city of a major G8 country, major developed country, because it was too dangerous, because the protesters were in control of the city. And actually, he slept on an aircraft carrier in the Adriatic Sea and was flown into these meetings, because that is the level that we got. And so we're building, and now we're building to September 2001 when the IMF and World Bank is going to be in Washington, D.C. The Ruckus Society is about to have its biggest one of all. We're like, we are going to do this like it's never been done before. And I was actually at my mom's house on my way across country, driving to that Ruckus camp that was going to be the biggest thing ever, when my mom woke me up and said, hey, you need to see what's happening on news, and planes were flying into the World Trade Center. And instead of having that Ruckus Society meet and understand this was a critical moment for our movement to get together and still figure out what we were going to do, just we're going to change course, we're going to do something, they canceled it, people retreated, they got their masking tape and their plastic and stayed home and were scared. And in some ways we had to rebuild for a decade after that from the fear factor that was put on everybody as a result of that. So. Who do you want coming? Wait, Shelly Cater here. Does anybody see Shelly? If she's hiding, can we make her come up?
Somebody's getting up over there.
Is that who that is?
No.
I just want to read, actually, I have a chapter about Seattle, called Solidarity in Seattle.
You can't read
everybody knows about, the battle in Seattle.
Can't read the whole thing, though.
No, hell no. Hell no. But I just want to give you an update, which is to the end of the chapter, because I hope I can read it here. So, anyhow.
Do you want a phone as a flashlight?
What I need is
he's going to give you some light.
Light and all right. That is great. That day in Seattle, representatives of those countries whose opinions weren't supposed to count heard rumblings in the belly of the beast, the great and powerful USA, that signaled that they weren't as friendless and helpless as they thought. When the American trade representative walked into a plenary session, the African delegation booed her. And as the day came to a close, one observer reported, a coalition of delegates from over 70 countries in Africa, Latin America, and Asia stubbornly refused to sign onto an agenda in which they saw they had little voice. Time and again after that, the World Trade Organization tried unsuccessfully to push a plan they called the Doha Round. That's of course when they met in Qatar, was in Doha, right? Supposedly designed to help developing nations, it was far more likely to help giant food exporters from rich countries like the United States flood their markets with cheap, genetically modified grain. At stake was the welfare of small subsistence farmers who in much of the third world made up the majority of the people. What happened in Seattle in 1999 gave third world nations the courage to resist. As 2015 drew to a close, the World Trade Organization ended the Doha round of negotiations. This was not unexpected, the New York Times observed, given how fruitless these discussions have been.
All right.
We'll come up and give us some stories now. Time for Winn.
As you all were saying, there was an awful lot of preparation, and I think in the interest of trying to use what went down in Seattle as an aid to our organizing now, I think part of the problem is that they gave us such an enormous target so far in advance. I got involved with the Alliance for Democracy in 96 or 97, and it was all about trying to deal with the corporate takeover of democracy. And so when we learned, and I don't even know when it was, but I think it was maybe 98, it was early when they announced that the WTO was going to be in Seattle.
I think it was January 99 when they announced.
Well, that was a long head start. I mean, and as soon as they did, we all knew it was going to be enormous. And organizing started at full speed, for 12 months. So here locally, I immediately started holding monthly meetings to try and get ready. And the university students were pretty excited also. And so they were always sending someone to coordinate with us. And we met with a couple of the, there were two really prominent anarchists that were organizing here with really funny names.
Anybody know any anarchists with funny names?
Oh God, it was great fun meeting with them. We were trying to really reach out, go into the Lions clubs and just anyone that would listen. I remember being on a talk show in which, you know, halfway through they were doing a commercial break or something, and the host was informing me, we've got the lowest ratings of any program we've ever done. This is awful, people are hating you. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's my goad, and I just laid in all the more, thinking that maybe this was big time wrestling or something, and they were looking for me to be the real bad guy on their show. Because we had so much prep, and I was collecting unemployment at the time, so I could work on this full time. I was able to go up to Seattle in November 20th or something, and just watch the Dan Collective Center there build. It was incredible, and as luck would have it, because of the college students and our connection there, they tied in with a bunch of Olympia activists. And so pretty quickly, the college students and my affinity group, which was my simplicity circle, expanded. We all decided to claim a 5th or 6th and Pike.
There were 13 slices. The entire city was divided up into 13 different slices of pie, and affinity groups, or really groups of affinity groups, selected one of those pie slices, scouted it out, and their job was to hold that 13th of the pie all around the convention center where the protests were going to happen. So I thought you were saying 113. I thought you were getting to the number of pie slices, but
no, they claimed an enormous, important slice. Because these Olympia guys just said, we promise you, we are ready. We will hold that intersection. And so sure enough, the morning of November 30th, we show up at that kind of park next to the Pike Street Market. And they've got these kind of elaborate floats that we're going to carry down the street with us. And the cops are kind of checking out these floats because these are pretty big objects, and they're not yet in their turtle outfits. They're just kind of plain clothes, uniformed. But and I remember one of them, one of the cops was trying to look at something, and somebody around it was very crowded. We were all kind of sardined into this park, and for some reason, someone didn't want that cop looking where he was looking. And so I pushed him out of the way. And of course, immediately, hey, because I wasn't supposed to be doing that. And I immediately went into full apology mode, and he accepted that, and we went on with our carrying these floats down the Pike Street. And when we got to the intersection we were supposed to claim, the two floats pulled together. We dropped down, we all locked to these metal structures, and the kind of facade of a float came off, and it was this fairly large stage that people could get up on and talk to the crowd. And so we had a, I'm going to say 10 by 20 foot platform. And roving bands of performers would come through and entertain us in that intersection.
In the middle of an intersection of a major American city on a Tuesday during rush hour.
That's brilliant. That's really great.
It was fantastic.
Next time, invite me to your affinity group. That sounds really fun.
The guys from Olympia had welded this all up, and we're totally ready. There was another activist that was working on a siege tower.
Oh, Mick Garvin. Mick Garvin. So one of the important things to note about Seattle is it really, the original tagline was Carnival against Capital. And the whole carnival concept, art and revolution, especially I think of David Solnit, but like a big contingent of people who really said, really kind of took Emma Goldman's, if I can't dance, I don't want to be in your revolution concept, and brought forward this idea that we can do this, we can be badass, we can be strong, and we can be beautiful, and we can be artistic, and we can be visually interesting, and so and we can have fun. And so the beauty that was in the street in the form of the giant puppets. Now giant puppets are passé. This was like the giant puppet entree into the world, right? This was like a whole, the idea that there were like 100 sea turtles, or all of these butterflies that would be affected by Roundup from Monsanto. All of these different kinds of energies were being brought in. So Mick Garvin, an Earth Firster, key to the Warner Creek campaign locally, decided that his artistic expression was to build a siege tower. So he built a giant wooden siege tower on wheels, and somehow got it off of the trailer and had wheeled it about a half a block toward his intersection when the cops came out, pulled out a knife, flattened all 4 tires, and that was the end of the siege tower.
It was still on the trailer. I was with him.
Oh, it was still on the trailer, okay.
He was debating. He went up top, locked down, and we were kind of in an alley, and the cops were like, yeah, no, we got a lot more things to deal with, and just left him. It was sad.
Well, just so that it was an incredible day with various dark times when people would be telling those of us that were locked down, get ready, put on your bandanas, and then there would be waves of tear gas and the percussion grenades. Oh God, it was awful. But then there would be these other times when seemingly the sun came out, and there were these incredible dancers and performers, and
be next.
And the moment that we heard that that day had been canceled was an elation like I'm not sure I've felt in any other time. It was I didn't appreciate that it was just that day. I thought the whole damn thing was canceled. We won!
Forever!
But I just have to say that luckily, towards the evening, Phil came by and was able to reason with me and insist that I couldn't hold that intersection all night long, and that it was really time to let it go. And
is that what I said?
Well, no. You weren't wanting me to make the decision, but you were pretty clear that I needed to make an informed decision, and it sounded like things were getting pretty ugly.
Yeah, that was really interesting at that point and stuff. Because I didn't want to step in. I wasn't part of the affinity group. You had your sources for getting information, but at the same time, when you're locked down in the middle of an intersection, you don't know what's happening like a block or two away. I was trying to at least inform you of some of the things that were coming your way.
It reminds me real quick of another wonderful performance group. How many people remember the Radical Cheerleaders?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Radical Cheerleaders, like basically all you needed was like kind of a stretchy red skirt, and suddenly you were a Radical Cheerleader, and it was a very gender-queered up kind of situation of people that like would memorize a few cheers and get out and do a little routine and have a radical message and bring a little levity, and it was another great element that continued on our movement for a while.
What was that band? The
Infernal Noise Brigade that you saw up there.
The Infernal Noise Brigade. They really brought it. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're feeling like really just like, and you're in the middle of a war or something, and then this funky rhythm starts coming down the street, you're just like, yeah, I got support.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they were the precursor to things like March 4th from Portland, or Extra Action from Oakland. This kind of concept of like politically motivated marching band energy to both protests and just for pure entertainment's sake. So one more kind of thing that Seattle, if not invented, like became spread widely at that fertile moment. All right, I think we're going to bring up Asante Riverwind now to do a little story. Can we give a little hand to a long-time Earth Firster, Asante.
Yeah.
Up to your mouth.
Okay,
Yeah, there
been
you go.
doing this for a long damn time, since a bunch of us were crazy enough in the 60s to think we'd actually succeed at winning a revolution. Chased me all the way to Cuba. But WTO was one of the high points in all of these decades of crazy actions. And I think the big thing there was that we didn't agree to just like meet at 11, go yell at the government buildings, go home at 3. We had a big fight 2 months earlier, it's up in September, in the Ruckus camp, where we had a meeting of people from all over. And the big thing there was we wanted to be able to get there early enough to shut the damn thing down. So we wanted people to get up at 6 in the morning. And everybody's going, you can't get a demo at 6 in the morning. And the university's doing an 11 o'clock one, the Teamsters are doing some noon thing or whatever. And so we were running around, we fought with everybody, and we won. We finally got a consensus. Yes, we're going to get up at, they didn't do 6, they did 7. But the thing was supposed to start at 9, so that gave us some time. And so, and then we're doing all the organizing. I've moved up there 2 months early so we could do all this outreach between all the different people. And it was just really kind of neat trying to talk to the people who are doing their 11 o'clock march. Say, okay, yeah, do your 11 o'clock march, but come here and join us at our 6, 7 o'clock march first, and then go to yours. So the night before, we're going to sleep, and we're kind of like not sure if we're really going to pull this off. We get there at 6, and suddenly we got like thousands of people pouring in. And we're like, damn, this is actually working. And I was on the flying squad. We had different people, like the different pieces of the pie. My squad ended up in your turf because a lot of these planned pieces of the pie, blockades, weren't big enough to cover the whole intersection. And so we had a big leak there where all these delegates are kind of streaming through. So we started pulling in everybody who was there. Didn't matter if we knew them, if they had any training, who the hell they were. Just like plug this spot. And we made this really tight line of people. And the delegates are freaking out, and there's like almost fist fights. And one guy's like, damn, you didn't tell me your country's having a revolution. He was from somewhere in South America. It was pretty damn cool. And we plugged the damn thing, so no one was getting through. And people were just amazing. We started doing this democracy in action consensus. And people were so big you couldn't hear everybody, so we were repeating things section by section to get consensus and everybody, pulling into it. And the cops are all lined up, and they start getting ready. Just the blockade, like one block over, was the first one attacked. And then they start getting ready to attack us. And I'm thinking, you guys all locked down. And everybody's got this like 30, 40 foot distance between the cops and them. They got their little tear gas howitzer and all their people getting ready. And I'm thinking, damn, it's really hard for them to shoot somebody square in the face if they can see your eyes. And so I walk up there and I start just talking to them. And these are just cops. And I'm talking to them not like aggro, and they're ordered not to talk to us. So I'd say, hey, how you doing today? And I'll leave a pause. Nobody's here to hurt you. And I leave a pause so that for their answer that doesn't come. And start talking and say, the real criminals are behind you. You might have integrity, but they're using it. After this long process, and I'm still amazed that they didn't pull me out of the way, shoot me in the face, or whatever the hell they were going to do. And then some copheads start nodding and agreeing with me. They wouldn't say anything. And finally, they all look like Darth Vader. They got these masks on, they're all black. I said, come on, look, you really got to look like Darth Vader to face the American people, to face your own community. And this one cop takes the mask off, and it's a woman, and she's crying. And then I start crying. And other cops start taking their helmets off. And they didn't attack us. The commander on his little half track up there was so fucking pissed off. He throws his helmet down, he jumps off, he's like, arr! And so I went back, and they didn't have a leader, so they couldn't do anything. And so I go back and tell people in the line, say, look, I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to keep people safe here. I could use people who can speak from heart, truth to power. Anybody who can come up here, and I told them what I was saying. So when we had like 30 people, and they bring another squad of cops in, and we do the same damn thing again. We talk them out. Cops take their helmets off, they don't attack us. And then they bring in the third squad. And same thing again. We did it to 3 squads. Finally, near 5, when we're getting ready to like leave, and then some gangsters came and started smashing Nike windows and kicking actors in the heads, and some of us had to run over and chase them away. So it was kind of this chaos starting to brew. They put another commander in, and they bring this squad in, and they're all like 7 feet tall or something, great big dudes. You know, there's one guy's up there with a big billy club, whapping his hands, and I go, come on, look, you didn't just become a cop so you can beat people up and get a paycheck. He goes, yep. And I'm like, shit. This ain't working this time. They handpicked those dudes. So, you know, well then the gangsters rip around the corner from smashing windows. They start kicking activists in the head. Things get really crazy. You and others went over to talk to the block, and we had this consensus to circle up and do kind of a victory procession out, but the cops started to attack. But it was interesting, those of us who talked to them, we didn't run. We just like put ourselves between them, because they saw our eyes. And I knew even the big dude wasn't going to club me. And so I just made myself, all of us made ourselves really slow, and just kind of, they had to like push us and push us. We go really slow. And so it gave time for everybody to leave. And so it was just, we won that day. And we went and circled up and kind of did a little celebration. But the next day, a bunch of us go down there again, and then they're all like surrounding us, and we're about to get busted. So we went to their one place we were supposed to be, their designated free speech zone. Hey, I thought we were supposed to have free speech anywhere. But anyway, get on the bullhorn and tell the cops about the Bill of Rights, how even Congress can't abridge on the, infringe upon the rights of people to gather peacefully, or any which way they want to actually in this country. And so they arrest us. They arrest 400 some of us. And later, we won a $4 million lawsuit against them for false arrests because they violated the Bill of Rights. So that took months. It was, years, but it was the same shit I warned them about. So that felt really kind of vindicating. And the other thing we did, when they put us on the buses, and they took us to Sandpoint Naval Station, we took over the buses. We unclipped our cuffs. And first time, a few of us did that, and they noticed we were free. And because most people were still locked up, they came back and they were clipping everybody's putting new cuffs on. So I put my hands behind my back, pretended that they were on. I said, could you take these, could you give me some new cuffs too? These are too tight. And he's like, no. And so as soon as he leaves, I got the fingernail clippers out. I started uncuffing everybody else. But I tell them, don't you dare move or show them you don't have your cuffs on until we get most everybody on the bus. And suddenly, we all get up at once at the signal, and the cops bailed, and we took over the bus for the night. We made a latrine in a corner, we made a water catchment system out of the vent, we had parties, we shared food, we sang songs, we rocked the bus all over, and a couple of other buses saw us what we were doing, and they did the same damn thing in whatever way they did. So that was one of the wildest, most beautiful parties that we had ever had. And then we spent the next 5 days in jail, finally didn't have any meetings, got to do some yoga, some stretches, negotiate with them. They tried to throw us out. We said, no, not until they release everybody. No charges. And we refused to go. So finally, they released people and we all left. That's about that.
I just want to say a little something about violence, nonviolence. Just give a little perspective about the violence, nonviolence thing. It's quite. People want to be on one side or the other, but I don't know what's happening here.
Production live.
And back to Kari.
And so you know how men are really violent towards women. Men rape women and stuff, and then there's this whole movement that women have been doing for years now of taking like self-defense training. So we're at self-defense training and we're learning how to poke dudes' eyeballs out and kick them in the nuts and break their kneecaps and do all this shit. And it's really important that we do this because if we tried to be non-violent like Gandhi, we would also just get raped and it wouldn't be very cool at all. So we have to, this idea of pure non-violence is it's kind of a fantasy. It's a little bit of a fantasy. It's an idea that isn't necessarily that practical. And so anarchists or whoever destroyed some property in Seattle. Some property. They didn't hurt people. They destroyed some property, and the property they destroyed. And I was on the street. I was looking at all this different. Here's a window broken out of the Gap. Here's a mom and pop store that's totally fine. People are even buying stuff. Here's Nike or Starbucks. But they're completely smashed. Why? Why are they smashed? And I want to mention, I found out about this, I don't know who knows about this, but in Bolivia, I think it was around the time of the WTO, the government of Bolivia sold the water rights of the whole entire country to some private company. And that private company started charging people for the wells that the people themselves had dug, for the water that the people themselves collected on their own roof. And the amount of money that people had to pay for their own water was like 50% of their income. And people did it for a couple months, but it was like, oh, no, no, no. And after about 2 months, people were just like, no. They stopped paying the bills. They went to the big city. They went to the water headquarters company office. They destroyed it. And it was over. And it was nothing happened ever with them again. And so, when you talk about nonviolence, what are you talking about? Are you talking about living beings? Are you talking about ecosystems? Are you talking about property? Let's think about that. Like, property is just stuff is stuff.
Thank you, Kari. Now we're going to have a story from Cave.
Hi, my name's Cave. You guys are so relaxed up here. I'm really nervous. I'm glad that you brought up the property destruction because there's a lot of propaganda about property destruction. And I'm kind of all for it. It's like if you want to stop a corporation from doing something, make it unprofitable. Destroy their products and they'll stop selling it, as soon as it becomes unprofitable. I just came to Seattle. I was in Northern California with Earth First for 9 months. I was on Gypsy Mountain, and so I was primed and ready to go when I got to Seattle. And I remember being, I think, at the intersection where they had this big giant whale, and they had the riot police there and stuff, and they came charging down, and they just all charged into this whale, and they thought it was gonna just move or something, and it just bounced them all backwards, and it was hilarious. And I remember you were talking about how they were bringing in people, just whoever. Well, they were coming out of, I think, one of the hotels on the corner, and we all, just 5 of us, went and blocked that entrance to the hotel so they couldn't come out of there. And it was just beautiful the way everything just happened, and the way they divided the whole place up into a big pie, and nobody knew what the other pie pieces were doing, so they couldn't infiltrate it, and I don't know, it was one of the most incredible times in my life. I was also in Miami. We got our asses beat in Miami. And I was in Cancun. And I have a story of Cancun really quickly. He was talking about how we were dumping food into these countries. We were dumping corn into Mexico, and the farmers were committing suicide because they couldn't keep their farms, And the same thing was happening in Korea, And there was this gentleman, I believe he was part of some organization. He'd been camping on the sidewalk in front of some place, just to get to talk to them, and they would never talk to him. He'd think he was there for a whole year. And they came to Cancun, and I think it was the second day, he climbed up on top of this barricade, and he pulled a pocket knife out of his pocket, and he stabbed himself in the heart, and he died right there. And it was really sad, and But the next day, the Koreans were, it was their show, you know. They went down to the hardware store and they bought hundreds of feet of rope and braided it all up and had like maybe 500-foot pieces of rope, like 3 or 4 of them. They tied it off to these barricades, and the whole crowd just put a hand on the rope, and the whole barricade just rolled over and just tore apart, you know. And it was more symbolic, because right on the other side of that barricade was the Mexican military, you know. And in Mexico, if you protest, they send you to the hospitals and to the buses you came in. But they didn't, because the whole world was watching. And it's just, I love it. It's like, I want to go to one now, you know. It's like, you know, if you've never been to a protest like that, go. You know, it'll change you for the better.
I've always wanted to be in a revolution, War Cry said in the video.
Well, you never know. I mean, it's like Chile. I mean, everybody was like just really calm for so long, and then they had that. Then the government raised the fares for the metro, and all of a sudden the whole country's in a revolution, and everyone's like, where did it come from? And it's because people just got tired of it for so long, but there just wasn't. There needed to be some kind of beginning, and that's kind of what I wonder for us. Like, when are we gonna step up? What's gonna start it?
And there is something to be said for thinking big, because the initial organizers regarding the WTO did not think, let's go and have our voices heard, or let's go and be a thorn in their side. The proposition from the beginning was to completely shut down the entire meetings. And so there's really a lot to be said for asking for what we want and what we need for the earth, for our communities, not settling for half measures, especially when it comes to our own vision for the world, and figuring out what it is that we really need to do and ask for, and then organizing not around merely reforming things that are bad, but really completely systematically changing things that absolutely need to be systematically changed. And that was at the heart of what was about the WTO the whole time. There's something else that was going on there that I think was really key, and that is, you don't necessarily see it in the streets, you've heard it a little bit in the stories, but it's certainly the case. There was a lot of disagreement. There was a lot of people that were really not down with some other people at the protest. If you get 50,000 people together that are all going to protest something, you're going to find people there that disagree with some of them, and you're going to find people there that disagree with 49,000 of them. And there were all of those people, and nobody represents everybody. And there were people that disagreed not only tactically around violence or non-violence or property destruction or something like that. There were people that disagreed strategically. And there were people that wanted very different sorts of outcomes. And there was underrepresentation in the video that we just showed you of women's voices. There was underrepresentation on the streets of people of color. There was a lot of critique before, during, and after. But somehow, people figured out enough of how they could work with each other on this common goal for that week. And we've all been a part of campaigns or events or protests where that level of agreement wasn't able to happen, and we were the weaker for it. And we probably have all hopefully been involved with something where somehow we got over enough over our differences that we could pull all on a 500-foot rope together in the same direction and pull something down, even if the person next to us we disagreed with on some fundamental things. And it was
called anarchy.
For some people, it's called anarchy. But for other people, anarchy is a very narrow thing. That's exactly what I say it is.
Self-organizing.
But it was self-organizing. But at the same time, it was self-organizing that let the Sierra Club come in. It was self-organizing that let the Teamsters and the Steelworkers come in. It let Global Exchange and Medea Benjamin have her say. It let and then it had a bunch of people that like nobody knew their names and nobody ever saw their faces. And somehow all those people pulled together for that week. And I think it's just an important critical lesson of really like the entire rainbow from infrared to ultraviolet being let in on the action and all working together. And it was a key part of Seattle, I think, its success. So.
We got, but what? Go ahead.
Yeah, just
Michael was interested in coming on up and giving his rap.
Okay, Michael Kerrigan, longtime activist here in the state of Oregon. Big hand for Michael.
So I can't say any better than Tim just said it. To me, the memories about that, I'm a Gandhian nonviolent activist. I see no reason to criticize any of my colleagues who did things, did differently than I would have chosen up there. People came together in a way that I have never seen before or since. But what I really like, the important message is that thing inspired the Occupy movement. I was very involved in that here, where direct action was a key point of it. We just referred back to what happened at the WTO. I'm a climate activist now. We're doing direct action, civil disobedience. Once again, we look back to the WTO and how people from all around the world came together, us with different strategies, different visions of how we wanted to do it. But we came together with a common goal to take down the WTO. And right now, I think we need to get together with a common goal, save the earth. We got to stop climate change. So I think tonight is critically important. What can we learn tonight to inform the actions that are happening today? I'm loving all these old stories. I was there. This is great. But what's critical is what next for now so we can save this planet.
Thank you. I will not try to take any energy away from climate. Clearly, it's an existential threat that faces us. But when it comes to a one-year time frame and organizing on a one-year time frame, I will just mention, in the next year and 2 months, one of three things will happen. Either Trump will get reelected, and what has happened in the last 4 years will be like child's play compared to the level of fascism and mind control and disruption of everything that we hold dear. Or he somehow will leave office and a theocrat in the form of Mike Pence, a Christian theocrat, will take over the United States. Or someone will beat Trump in an election and the racist element of this country that has been given permission, the racist and homophobic and anti-woman, misogynistic, patriarchal element will now suddenly feel like they are no longer in control of the country, and they will react in some way with Trump either agreeing to leave office or not agreeing to leave office. One of those three things is coming down the pike, and it will happen between now and the inauguration in the first week of January. And so we might, as a community, state, nation, world, think of how we're going to deal with that situation, and we have the same 1 year to prepare that we had to prepare for the WTO. So that's just something we might want to think about, because almost everything that we hold dear requires that we do not live in a fascist dictatorship to get it done. So is there anybody else that wanted to tell a story tonight?
I'll say one thing.
Come on up.
From here, it's fine.
Okay.
Stand up.
Nice go.
We can't forget that after he is out, that it's just going to go away. None of these things are just going to go away. They're still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And one of the great things that this community has is community, right? There's so many people, for instance, in this room that know each other by face, know each other by name, have lived in the same community for years and or decades. We know, there's a lot of, what can I say, there's a lot of in-depth analysis around political issues. There's a lot of understanding of tactics and strategy. It's a very strong community that's very grassroots and a very powerful place from which to again inspire the world, as the Whiteaker has done in the past. So that's really something to think about as we think about how we're going to respond to this next year in so-called American democracy.
I mean, I think it's true what you're saying about politics, and I think we got to do what we can, but also I think it's a mistake to think that civilization as we're living it can continue with a healthy planet. I mean, it's just, it's killing the planet, and it's not these bad people. It's this bad way of life. It's like industry. I mean, you know, do we care that Weyerhaeuser over in Springfield is pouring dioxin into the river all the time and making the salmon go extinct? When I first moved to town, there was salmon. 2 salmon runs in 1987. Every year, 2 salmon runs. People would go with a baseball bat to the river and they'd conk a fish on the head, bring home a giant salmon. And there's no salmon. I mean, dioxin is poisonous in the smallest, in 1 molecule of dioxin will do cell damage. It is totally poisonous, and it's just happening. It's just happening and it's happening. And so really, this way that we're living is it's a war. It's a war on ourselves and the planet. And so I think people all over the world are starting to understand this, that we have to do something that is so big. We have to change this whole thing, and fast. And, you know, it will break down. It will break down. And if we can localize food, that would be great for us. If we could organize together and grow food around here, we got great places to grow food, that'd be really wise. And make some sort of alternative governing structure other than our current government here. You know, just like create an alternative government so when stuff gets rough, we can have our alternative government that is actually functional. That could be wise.
You do know that beef's the largest greenhouse gas emitter on the planet, right?
Not when it's roaming around in the countryside. When it's in a factory farm, yeah.
Beef.
Animals are supposed to wander around and eat grass. That's not a bad thing.
U.S. military.
Yeah. The Pentagon's the largest industrial contributor to climate change. That's different than all those cows. That's kind of collectively yes, but so we got to challenge militarism.
And we'll see
save the planet.
And we'll see what they do if Trump refuses to leave the White House.
I think a key thing is movements have to come together. White supremacists came to Eugene about 6 months ago, and they had a rally downtown. You know, we went there and challenged them, but movements have to come together. We got to broaden that and say we need to, we cannot accept white supremacists in our community. We cannot accept people destroying our earth. And so we might, differ in strategy and our ultimate goals, but our ultimate goal is to take over this fascist state and have a world where we can all, live together. So
Yeah.
it's important not to judge each other, but support each other and move on.
Hey, okay, Tim suggested that I float this idea. I have this idea, a strategy. We have all these nonprofits in Eugene. Hundreds and hundreds of nonprofits in Eugene. And if you look at all the nonprofits and everybody who works there and everybody they know, and the work they're doing is the real work of life for this city, then you look at the few people who are the 1% in Eugene, the Chambers Construction, the Gene Tate Real Estate, Nike, whatever, and you have these few people over here. But if you look at the nonprofits and everybody who they know and all the work they're doing, that's a huge power. But those nonprofits are all just like fingers of a hand of a paralyzed person, and they don't know how to go like this. And so my idea is to get in Chile they have a thing called the Union of Unions, and whoever the Union of Unions suggests for president basically becomes president. It has so much power because they go like this, all the unions together. So I'm thinking all the nonprofits together, how do they set up a system where they support each other and they make decisions together? That could be the basis of a new government.
Yeah, right on.
All right, we don't have to go till 8 o'clock. Was there somebody who wants to say something there? Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Do you want to come up?
Yeah, that'd be great if you got up there. Okay, thanks a lot, man. You were awesome. Kicked ass.
Well, I'm just going to be more, because I'm always big, huge, broad. But what I see happening is happiness for me, because what I look at is karma. And if we create karma all the time, and that's what they want us to do, how do we create karma? So many people eat the meat of tortured animals, tortured, morning, noon, and night, every fucking day. And it goes on and on and on. More farms, more factory farms, just horrors. And that creates so much karma. They can get away with going to wars we don't even fucking know about or anything because it creates so much karma. And the truth of the matter is I've never seen on Google, that's where I look for news, because I want to see, not the TV, but you know what a lot of people are reading. Every day there's articles on vegetarianism and veganism. I'm thrilled because there's two things. The other thing is the Me Too movement. The violence against women and children, the sexual assault is everywhere all the time, and it's a secret, you know, and now it's coming out. Again, it's so much violence that people carry around and they hide it. You know, I hid my severe violence. I nearly died as a kid. You know, my father raped me so torturously, you know, and my mom wouldn't help me. Nobody can help you, you know. So these are the things that keep everything going no matter what you do. If you're creating violence by your actions, it's got a reaction, karma. And that's what they count on. That's why they started building this factory farm secret. You know, secret. I didn't even know about them for a long, long time, did you? You know, I've been a vegetarian for 42 years, but, you know, I was vegan on and off, but I didn't know, you know, until I drove by one. It had my name. My name is Golden now, but it was Harris. It was Harris Ranch, and it's right out in plain sight. It smells so bad for miles, and all the cows are lying down. They're sick as shit. They're in this much of their own feces. You know, these are beings that are innocent. I mean, humans, they're not always innocent. They have karma, you know. They incarnate somewhere and they're getting their shit back. But these are basically very innocent beings that in the millions are just being tortured every day. That's karma. It's going to come out as wars, oppression of people. That's what I have to say. And I see it every day. There's articles on veganism, vegetarianism, me too, you know. Go for it! Because that's what's going to fucking change everything! And then you know what? We won't need Trump or any of those fucks. We'll just go into our own communities and do our own thing and get back to it, growing and this and that, you know. That's what I see it will work. You know, because all of that shit in Washington, it's not us and the things on TV. And why do I want to see what the NASDAQ fucking does? You know what I mean? I'm living in my car right now. Think I fucking care about the NASDAQ? Like the NASDAQ you. So, thank you.
Sorry?
Alan.
Oh, Alan, I'm sorry. Alan, okay.
I would like to say thank you for everyone who's here today and sharing your stories and for the work that you have done and continue to do. I appreciate it, and it means a lot to see what has worked and to hear stories and to see that there's a continued spirit of collaboration to continue our work and our struggle towards what we believe is right. And one thing I want to mention is a note about continuing to activate organizing efforts. And I'm going to put my time in the next few months into beginning to start collecting people who identify as Cascadians to meet each other and get to know each other and have community together. And I think it's going to be a beautiful thing just to have space to get to know each other and talk openly about what we want to work on in the future and what we are working on currently and how we can help each other in our projects and our goals. So we're going to have a first meeting this Monday evening at the old Whiteaker Firehouse at 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. And that's right around the corner at 1st and Jackson. So you're welcome to join us at that time. And you're welcome to get my contact information after this if you would like. Thank you.
There you go. That's the next thing to do.
You're going to wrap up, baby.
I'm going to wrap up real quick. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to Tim Lewis for his organizing. There's a way.
Buy me a beer.
There's a way that people can contribute to keep this thing going.
Yes.
There's a little thing you can put money in. So if you want to give a little bit of money there, that helps keep the next one of these things going, so that would be really great.
That's right.
Again, one more big round of applause to Sam Bonds to give us the space to do this. They're super awesome for doing that. Thank you to all the people that sat up here and all the people out there that gave their stories, keeping this thing alive. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to all of you for coming. You know, this really is the exact 20th anniversary of the WTO. There are stories all over the media. If you search it right now, there's a lot of information in major news venues all around the world that have a lot of different interesting takes. But the organizers, some of the central organizers of the Direct Action Network, the DAN, have been engaged in some, I think they call it the WTO Shutdown Organizer History Project, or something like that. And they have a lot of great information with a lot of people that have spent 20 years continuing their activism from Seattle and trying to evolve and trying to spread out and trying to get intersectional and trying to figure out like what's next and what works. One entry point for that, if you go onto the Common Dreams website and you look for an article by somebody by the name of Chris Dixon, that'll be an easy way to plug in. So Common Dreams, Chris Dixon is an easier way you can find out fantastic analysis of what happened 20 years ago, what we can learn from it and how we can move forward, and then it links on to other things from there. So let's take this as not merely an ending to 20 years, but as a jumping off point to the next thing that's coming, and maybe go into Allie's thing or whatever else your thing is. So thanks all for all of your hard work.
And thanks to Tim Ream.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
MC.
Let's keep up the good work for our communities, for the earth, and for each other. Love y'all.
We shut it down. Let's do it again.